Hello, everybody. This is Austin Sullentrop, your Clifton Strengths Portfolio Manager. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. I'm excited to share with you your monthly coaching tip, exclusive for our Gallup Certified Strengths Coaches. This is the only place you're going to see this, is in this newsletter here for you, our Gallup Certified Coaches. So thank you again for your commitment. Wanted to share with you some thinking around how to use Clifton Strengths when coaching teams. It's one of the most common questions we get at Gallup. Is how do I take this tool we love so much and bring it to an effective team conversation, right? So how do I help build a team that's cohesive, more functioning, more impactful, and more sort of powerful as a group, right? And so when we think about this, and we think about sort of what works best in helping teams with strengths, I go back to what I consider to be sort of the foundational component of this, which is understanding how we define a strengths-based team at Gallup. So that all starts, there's a definition we've used for years, that a strengths-based team is a group of imperfect but talented individuals valued for their strengths who need one another for individual and team excellence. I go back to that definition because I think it's really sort of gives us the groundwork for how strengths plays in to a powerful team, right? And it starts with this idea of being imperfect but talented, right? So I love that as the foundation of a conversation with a team, of understanding that Clifton Strengths gives us a language to talk about those talents we have, obviously, to talk about what we're right at, or what we can naturally do, what's right with us, those things that Don spoke of with such passion for years and really drove the research around Clifton Strengths. But it also gives us an appreciation for our imperfections, for the fact that there are some things we're not great at. There are some things that we may sort of struggle with, some tasks, some components of our role, right? That all of us as individuals are imperfect, but we bring value. We have talent. Right? So when I go in to work with a team and I'm thinking about using strengths, I try to begin the conversation at the individual level, one-on-one, by embracing what are those things you're imperfect around? What are those things that you have, you struggle with as an individual, that you maybe about your role or your part on the team that maybe gets in your way sometimes? But as we know from being strengths-based, we don't want to focus on that. We want to acknowledge those imperfections. But in the context of a team, who on your team do you lean on to help you get through those things? Who on your team do you partner with to help sort of round out those components of your role that you struggle with? Many of us have over the years looked at that star diagram, sort of this idea that we all have sharp edges and things we can sort of build out, right? I like to think of each of us individually in that sense that we have value we bring. In the context of a team, I can be looking for how can I take those things I'm great at, that talented piece of who I am, and look to my teammates that might need me to help them. And that it brings sort of this idea of I'm always looking outside of myself for how I can use my talents to support the people around me, right? And in turn, how can I be asking my teammates for their talent to help me? Right. So this idea of being imperfect but talented, to me, sets the stage that there are things I'm going to bring that my teammates need from me. And so I like to use Clifton Strengths to give the conversation sort of a language and a discussion around how can my activator be something beyond just how it helps me? How can my activator not just get me going every day, right? But how can I use my activator on purpose to help Jim get going with something he's maybe stagnant with? Or how can I help how can I help Tiffany, who's got this great energy and excitement and enthusiasm for an idea? How can I use my activator to help her get started, to help her take action? So what it does is it helps sort of frame up all of my talents with an others-minded focus, right? So now my talent is not just mine. My talent is now something that can help those around me. Because if in that definition, imperfect but talented, who need one another, I think that's the value of a team. And especially when we're working with small teams, right? When you're working with small teams, you may not have a group of people who have an expertise in a very sort of set of fields. You may have a narrower sort of toolkit to be pulling from. So it's so important to fully leverage the strengths of the people on your team. So I love taking this definition of a strengths-based team as sort of the initial filter to look through it at, right? I think about an example, I think that works really well for me in my own life. I was part of a team for many years, very small and agile in nature. There were about 4 of us on the team for 2 years. And of the 4 of us, we had a high concentration in strategic, right? So 3 of the 4 of us had strategic as a dominant theme. But what we found was that we all saw connections to things, right? So we saw where we were going. We saw the path we were taking. But because we all had strategic, we also saw a lot of different ways we could do it. And so what we found was, as a team, we started struggling sometimes with being on the same page because we all saw how we could get to someplace, and we weren't always doing a great job talking to one another about the path we wanted to take or the path we thought was the best one to take. We just ran down that path. And so what we found was, even though we all sort of shared strategic and that thinking and that enjoyed sort of that approach to things, we had different ways of processing and coming up with those paths, right? So I, being activator, communication, futuristic, I love to talk through it. I love to get into the room and in a staff meeting, be sharing ideas and talking, and then jump down a path. Whereas my peers were a little bit more sort of cautious and thoughtful. Things like analytical and deliberative was one of my peers' sort of top 2 themes. And so what we got to a point of doing was thinking, in that staff meeting that I wanted to sort of get up and start talking, what I would do instead of running down a path like I may instinctively want to do, I would use that to talk through all the obstacles. And so I would come and I'd open with a question of, hey, team, help me think through what I'm missing here. And I would lead with the question that was playing to the strengths of my team members, right? The ones that had the details, and they were thinking about the pitfalls and thinking about all the unintended consequences. And so what ended up happening over time was I was able to leverage what I did best, which was the conversation and the creativity and the unbridled options that it presented. And then it allowed my teammates to provide their thoughts and their perspective, where over time, what we got to was that in every staff meeting, we ended up having a conversation around the unintended consequences of all of our actions. And it became sort of a theme we talked through, to the point now where in my career, I don't instinctively think about unintended consequences. That's not a talent thing I have. I'm high positivity, I'm high futuristic. I'm thinking about where we're going. But because of that experience of having worked with that team and played to the strengths of my team members, I now instinctively, when I go in to pitch an idea, I'm asking others to help me think of unintended consequences, because I've understood and I've learned through using strengths on my team that I have talent that can help this conversation. But because I also acknowledge my imperfections, I know that without other people helping me, I may miss something, that my excitement and optimism may get me in trouble. And so I am sort of learned and evolved in thinking about how to leverage the strengths of my teammates in every plan I make, in every dream I come up with, in every concept I'm pitching to teams. I'm asking, what are the unintended consequences? Not because it's a natural talent of mine, but because I've learned that my teammates can do that for me really well.